Welcome to Intuitive Flow, hosted by me, Mikaela Filar, intuitive energy healer and mindset mentor. You've landed in the space you need to be to hear the no bullshit truth about how to actually manifest the life that you crave. This is the podcast that's here to shake you awake. It's time to unapologetically step into the woman you came here to be, the one who effortlessly attracts everything she desires. Let's flow. Hey guys, welcome back to Intuitive Flow. Before we get into today's episode, I want you to consider this. What if healing didn't require reliving your trauma? What if your body already knows how to release what your mind has been carrying? And all it needed was the breath to unlock it. Today's conversation is a powerful one. I am joined by Suzy Perry, a hypnobreathwork facilitator whose entire life changed after a traumatic brain injury forced her to slow down and listen in a way she never had before. In 2017, Suzy became completely bedbound for over a year, and in that stillness, breath became her lifeline. The tool that helped her rebuild her mind, reconnect with her body, and ultimately rewire her entire life. Now, trained in the alchemy of breath and hypnobreathwork, Suzy works with the subconscious and nervous system to help people heal emotionally and physically, often without needing to talk through or relive the past. And in this episode, we go deep. We talk all about how breathwork accesses subconscious and altered brainwave states and what that actually means, why you don't need to relive trauma to heal it, what it looks like when the body releases emotions the mind couldn't process, why healing can feel lonely when you start shedding old identities and relationships, how intuition gets louder right before massive life shifts, and what happens when you stop betraying your body and start trusting it. We also explore why fear shows up right before expansion, what to do with the intuitive downloads that come through during the breathwork sessions, and how to know when your body, not your mind, is leading the way. If you've ever felt stuck in talk therapy, if you've done the inner work but still feel blocked, or if you know that you're outgrowing your current life and just don't know what's next, this conversation will meet you right where you're at. So take a breath and let's get into it. Hello, Suzy, and welcome to Intuitive Flow. I cannot friggin' wait for this episode. You guys are in for a treat. I have been working with Suzy for about a year now, which is so wild. I met her through my business mentor, and we have now been doing breath work once a month together inside of Top Tier, a business mastermind I'm a part of. And it's just been such a journey to really dive into breathwork on a deeper level. And breathwork is something that I recently, in the past year and a half, learned about. So Suzy, I would love if you could just explain what the heck breathwork is, because I didn't know for the longest time. And I feel like there are a lot of people out there who don't know how powerful breath work can be and the different types of breath work that you can use. So if you could just explain, what do you do and why is it so important for people to get connected to their breath?
Yeah, I love those questions so much, Mikaela. So first of all, I'll explain what I don't do because I do get asked this question a lot. People are like, "Oh, you just breathe, don't you? Don't we all do that every day?" Or, you sell air. These are other things that I get asked. So first of all, I'm not a functional breathwork coach where we look at, how much deep you can breathe or how your diaphragm is working, nor am I a yogic breathwork practitioner. What I do is something called hypnobreathwork, and I call it an experiential therapy. So it's like therapy, but an experience. So we are going deep into healing. So, what we actually do when we breathe in a certain way with a conscious connected breath, with an open mouth and no pauses, this allows us to access different brainwave states. And when we are in different brainwave states, we can actually reprogram our subconscious mind. So, breathwork is known as one of the quickest ways to get into a theta brainwave state. This is the brainwave state where neuroscience says instantaneous change can happen. So,
Mm,
in breathwork, you have experienced it yourself. Layers and layers of conditioning can be released in one session. So, during breathwork, we can have all different types of experiences. You can have tears, you can have laughter, you can have out of body experiences. And often all these emotions come and our body releases them. But what I love about it the most is that you haven't had to talk about it till the cows come home and re traumatize the trauma, which I can find sometimes happens in talk therapy. And I love talk therapy too. For sure, there is a time and a place for it. But what I love about breathwork is that you can release these past experiences, past events from your body, release the emotional charge, and feel much lighter and freer. And actually, with each session, you just become more and more like yourself. That's
yeah.
the main thing people say to me with every session. I'm just more myself.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a beautiful way to describe what breath work is. And I feel that to my core because I feel like every time I do a session, it's like the layers are just like, it's pairing breath work with like what I do has just been like seriously chef's kiss. And I'm so happy that you brought up talk therapy because I'm not gonna lie, I was in talk therapy for the majority of my life, off and on, as a child in my teenage years, and even in my early 20s. And eventually, I was just like, I give up. Like, this isn't helping because I was just talking about the problem, reliving the trauma over and over again. I'm like, this isn't getting me anywhere. And also, the people who are facilitating don't genuinely care about me, I felt. So, it was just, like, not the vibe. So, I don't love talk therapy. I would much rather get with a breathwork facilitator, with you, with me, an intuitive who we can just uncover the shit without having to talk about the shit on repeat over and over again, right? So, I love breathwork so freaking much, and like I said, pair it with what I do and teach, like, it's just chef's kiss, and I love it so much that I decided to have Suzy come into Devoted, which is my 13-week course where we are stepping into the hot, rich, and in love version of you. And I had her come in and hold a breathwork session. It is pre-recorded in your modules. It will come with Devoted, so you get to experience what it's like working with Suzy. And Suzy, like, what did we cover inside of that breathwork session with you? It was so powerful.
Yeah. So when we think about becoming that version of ourselves who is wealthy, who is owning the body she's in, like we can like one of the main things that's going to stop us getting there is self-worth. So one of the things we really did touch on with your clients is worthiness. And, because from such a young age, we often get taught you're not clever enough to do that. You're not pretty enough to do that. Who are you to live your dreams? God, you can't earn that money. Rich people are bad, blah, blah, blah. All these stories, right?
Yes.
So then when we want to be that version of ourselves, like, we think we run our lives from our conscious minds, but like neuroscience shows us that 95% of our actions and reactions are from our subconscious. So we will consciously want to go and be that version of ourselves, but then we will subconsciously self-sabotage. We'll procrastinate, we'll go into perfectionism, we just won't show up. So what we really did with your ladies was really get to those blocks that were blocking them from moving forward those money mindset blocks, those worthiness blocks, and
Yeah.
really getting them to really see what they needed to do to step into that version. I remember one of your ladies, for example, was her biggest block was that she was worried about her family's judgments if she became that person, which I think is
Mm,
actually such a common worry for people when they are growing, when they're changing, like, oh, what are people going to think of me? But actually, this is our life to live.
mm.
And actually, what if us stepping into that version is actually going to inspire them? Yeah, it might ruffle their feathers at the beginning because they'll be like, who is she? Who does she think she is? Da da da. But hopefully, eventually, it will inspire them to also be willing to step into that version of themselves.
Yes, 1000%. It was so powerful. So many breakthroughs were had during that session. It was so, so incredible. And we had like a few people who had never done breathwork before. So it was such an incredible experience, Suzy. Thank you. I know that breathwork has truly transformed your life, and you are here on purpose, for a purpose, living in your soul pool career, like thriving, living your best life. But this wasn't always what life looked like for you. So, can you just tell the audience, like, I know your story, but please share what is your journey of like where you were, what were doing before this, what led you into this work, and what got you to where you are now?
Yeah. So before this, I actually had a real estate business. I was I have a low I had bought a load of properties in East London, residential, commercial properties, and I would be on building sites every single day, managing
Wow, I literally can't picture you doing that at all.
like literally hard hat, no makeup, like covered in dust every day. And this was actually a business that my father had passed down to me when he passed away 20 years ago. So
Mm,
I always felt like it was my duty to run his business. However, it was never my purpose. It was never my calling. And I truly believe that in this life, if you are not on your purpose, then you are going to get lessons to try and help you get onto your purpose. Now,
1000%.
I had a few lessons and I didn't listen to them properly. And then the universe was like, you know what? You are not in alignment. So it gave me a huge accident. So I had an accident where I sustained a traumatic brain injury. I wasn't able to get out of bed for 14 months. I couldn't walk properly. I couldn't talk properly. And I would found myself flat on my back in a dark room, and the only thing I could do was breathe. So luckily, I just
So,
discovered breath work, and I was like, okay, if this is all I've got, then let me utilize it. So I started breathing every day. I started doing as many online courses as I could. I couldn't leave the house, but I could open up a Zoom room and breathe. And I found this 10-month training in 2017. Remember, no one was using Zoom in 2017 before COVID, but for
yeah.
some reason, I managed to find this 10-month training whilst I was in the midst of my brain injury on Zoom. And I was like, okay, if I can't get out of bed, I can't have people come to visit me. What I can do is open this laptop and breathe. So it literally saved my whole life.
Wow.
I'm
That's
so
incredible.
yeah.
Literally chills, literally chills. Every time, it doesn't matter how many times I hear your story, every time I hear it, I'm like, chills. Like, you were divinely guided. Like, you trusted your intuition to full force to go into the online coaching world. Like, that wasn't a normal thing to do. Like, if you were to be around people who were just like, your normal day-to-day people and be like, "Oh, this is what I'm doing. I'm learning from this course online." They would look at you sideways, be like, "What do you mean you're learning online?"
Well, yeah, and not only that, but I was learning breathwork online. So obviously
Yeah.
I'm now having a brain injury. I'm now telling my family that I'm studying breath online. They're like, oh my God, Suzy really has gone mad.
Yeah, like she really did hit her head.
Really, really did hit her head.
Oh my goodness. And for you to trust that pool to like fall into breathwork, like how did you learn about breathwork? How did you know that this could be a tool for you to utilize to help your brain injury heal?
Yeah, so luckily I just discovered breathwork a month before my accident in Bali. And after my first session, I was hooked. And I went and found a different class every single day, signed up to everyone's email lists. I was like, wow, what is this magic?
Mhm.
Just for context, on my second ever breathwork session, I had an orgasm in a room of 600 people. So I was like, this
Whoa.
is unbelievable. I don't know what is going on here, but like, and no one was touching me. I was just lying on a mat breathing, you know.
Yeah.
So I knew that this was powerful.
Mm.
And when I got that email from one of the people I'd signed up to, it was one of my favorite teachers. It was Anthony from the Alchemy of Breath. He is absolutely incredible. And I saw that he was doing this 10-month training, and I was like, okay, I really trust him. And I can't do anything else right now. Let me do something because at that point, I was depressed. I was suicidal. I even have people come to visit me because I couldn't talk, and trying to hold a conversation was too much for me. So I was like, okay, let me do this. And I had absolutely no wish to become a teacher at all. I just
Mhm.
wanted to do it because it was 10 months. And then obviously when you find something so powerful, you can't help but become a trainer in it. Yeah.
I have a question that okay, you obviously had this traumatic brain injury and you're bedridden. You have nothing but your breath. You also probably had the Western medicine, the doctors telling you, this is what you need to do. This is what your life is going to look like from now on, from here on out. Like you had all of these people in your ear telling you one thing, and you chose to believe something completely different. You chose to do something so out of the norm that not everyone is going to do or willing to do. Like, what kind of inner strength or like how did you know to trust like yourself and the breath work as opposed to what the doctors were telling you, like this is the end all be all, like this is what your life is going to look like from here on out, this is what's possible and what's not possible, like that level of trust in yourself is so high. And also like how was that like pool of like, do I trust the doctors, do I trust this, like what was that like for you?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question, Michaela. And I actually don't know if you even know my story before my brain injury, but the reason I was able to do that with my brain injury was because I had already done another healing journey. So this was one of the lessons I didn't listen to properly. But before my brain injury, 5 years beforehand, I was diagnosed with 4 cancerous tumors. And the doctors wanted to do the most horrific surgery. They wanted to do a vulvectomy. That means cutting out my vulva.
What?
Yes. So,
Wait, that's insane. And then you
so
okay, yeah, go ahead.
the doctors wanted to do it. I didn't do it. The doctors wanted to do it. I was having to sit in doctor's surgeries listening to surgeons say to me, Suzy, we're going to cut out your vulva, but don't worry. In 6 months' time, we're going to rebuild it with skin from your mouth. And at the time, I was 30 years old. I was like, what? I was having to have conversations with my then partner about, am I going to be able to orgasm ever again?
Yeah.
Like, that's a really important part of my life.
Yeah.
Sure, it is for every human on this
Yes.
earth. So, you know, I think because my tumors were there and because the surgery was so horrific, I was just like, that was the first time I'd ever heard my intuition. That was the
Mm.
first ever time I ever heard my intuition. I was sat in the doctor's surgery and I just felt this kick in my stomach, and it was like, no, don't have the surgery. This isn't your story. So I said, no. I said, I'm not doing this. And I actually found a Chinese doctor who was like, I can heal you. So I started on doing Chinese herbs, and within 6 months, my tumors had shrunk by 40%. But then my body started rejecting the herbs. The herbs are very hard on your body, really hard on your liver. My body started rejecting them. I was vomiting after drinking them every day. So then I did something called the Gerson therapy, where I juiced around the clock and did coffee enemas around the clocks. And then I did intravenous vitamin C and intravenous ozones. And I put everything into it to save my vagina because it had to be saved. And the thing is, the scary thing is that if it was any other part of my body, I may have just given it to them, but not
Mm.
that part. I was not willing at all to give them that part. And it took 2 years, but I fully healed my tumors against
Wow.
all of the doctor's odds. So obviously, I didn't listen to my lesson, still went back to the building site, not listening. 3 years later, after fully healing that, I'd just come out of fully healing that. I was like just starting to live again, just a couple of years later, boom, huge accident. I'm like, okay. So the Western doctors at the time were like, you're not going to get better. Here you go. We're just going to give you some antidepressants to get through this. And I was just like, I'm not listening to you. I'm not listening to you. I've already defied one doctor's odds. I'm going to defy your odds too.
Mm.
Problem with this one, Mikaela, the problem with this one is I didn't have my brain on my side. You know, when I healed my tumors, it was actually quite an empowering journey because I had my mind to keep me strong, to keep me motivated, to study, to learn, to go to conferences, to speak to different doctors, to study biohacking. But when you have when you have a brain injury, you don't have your mind. My brain was like scrambled eggs. So it's like, I couldn't even use my mind to help me. So it was really tough because the first year was so dark to the point where actually, as I was suicidal, I started drinking. I started drinking, smoking again because I was so confused and didn't understand what was going on. I was misdiagnosed for a long time. I was just misdiagnosed with a concussion. And it wasn't until the NHS in England, our National Health Service, they never sent me to a neurologist. And a year into my brain injury, I was like, I'm going to go and pay for my own neurologist. And he was just like, I actually can't believe you've not been looked after. You have a moderate traumatic brain injury. So it was a really rough journey. But as the more the more breathwork I did, the more hyperbaric oxygen chambers I did, my brain started to come online little by little. As soon as I had a tiny bit of brain power, I would start reading, I would start studying, I'd start talking to doctors, neuroscientists, understanding what can I do? How can I get better?
Wow. Yeah. That's such an inspirational story. Like doing what 99.9% of the population would literally never do. A lot of people would just succumb to their circumstances and trust whatever the doctor is saying. Like, there's, if you feel in with your whole body that there is another way and you trust that, like, it's going to end up working out for you. Like, I fully believe that. And you're a walking testimony of that as well. And I love that you also are like aware of the energetic side of it because just like there's physical, there's energetic. So it's not just about like the physical of like, oh, this just happened to me and this happened to me because it happened to me. Like, no, you're like, no, this happened because I was living in misalignment and I'm supposed to be doing something completely different, but I'm not, I'm ignoring that pool. And so I'm continuously being pushed back into this other thing. And the second it took you 2 times of dealing with those reflections, but you figured it out and you took your lessons and you know, you really went for it. And now you are living this life where you get to wake up and do something that you love every single day. and you travel all around the world and you've been to so many different places. And it's what's crazy to me is that you have, telling me your story about being the owner of a real estate and being on properties and wearing the hard hat and very much so being in your masculine like I cannot vision you being that type of person at all because when I am in front of you, when I am next to you, like I just see this angelic woman, like so in her feminine power, right? Like balancing the masculine and feminine energies within herself in such a graceful way. And I know that that wasn't an easy place to like get to. And especially, you're almost like forced into it and slowly but surely like evolved into who you are now. And it's just like such a beautiful thing to see and to hear. Interrupting today's podcast episode because I have to tell you something. Awaken Intuition 101. It's a free live masterclass where I'm teaching you how I used my intuition to build a six-figure business, manifest lasting love, and finally trust myself more than my fear. Inside, I am breaking down the difference between anxiety, fear, and intuition, the real reason you don't trust your intuition and it's not what you think, how I use intuitive decision making to scale to six figures, the intuitive tools that led me to my healthy, lasting relationship, how to start reading your own energy so you stop outsourcing your power, and the first step to collapsing timelines in your life. Your intuition is the $1,000,000 tool you are not fully utilizing. And that stops February 8th at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time inside of Awaken Intuition 101. Because here's what not trusting yourself is actually costing you. It's costing you time. It's costing you aligned opportunities. It's costing you peace in your nervous system. It's costing you the relationship that you say that you want. And it's costing you the version of your business that requires very bold moves. Every time you override yourself, you reinforce doubt. Every time you hesitate on what you already know, you delay the life that you are meant to be living. If you're done second guessing, done outsourcing your power, and done sitting in the gap between who you are right now and who you know you are meant to be, register now. The link is in the show notes below. If you can't make it live, no worries. It will be recorded and sent to your emails right after. But showing up live is really where it's all at. The energy in the room is always so contagious. And when you show up live, you will have a special opportunity that will not last long. So I hope to see you on Sunday, February 8th at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for Awaken Intuition 101. All right, let's get back into today's episode.
Oh yeah, thanks, Mikaela. It definitely that was part of the healing, and I love how you talk about the energetics because when it came to healing my tumors, because of where they were on my body, I had to really like if you look at Louise Hay and you can heal your life, she always talks about whenever things happen in your body, you need to look at where it's happened and the stories and the relationship to that part of your body. So I was on a building site with a bunch of men every single day for years doing I was like, at that point, when I got diagnosed, I was actually converting an old gymnasium into multiple residential accommodations. It was like huge projects. And
Mm-hmm.
I was so in my masculine. I was getting the boys sausage sandwiches every day, reading the Sun, which is like the terrible English newspaper for like a lot of builders. It's like known as like all the builders read it. It's trash. And I was like, you have to be one of the lads on a building site.
Mm-hmm.
You can't come in as a feminine woman. You just have to be one of the lads. And I was so out of alignment with my essence. And part of my healing was that I had to get into my feminine essence again. I had to heal that. I had to allow myself to be feminine to when we as women are in our feminine energy, it's so healing for us. It's so
Mhm.
healing for us. And I'll tell you a great story. So I had healed my tumors by 80% by doing all the the usual stuff, the fasting, the juicing, the coffee enemas, the cleansing, all the physical stuff. But there was 20% that just wouldn't shift. And I was like, at that point, I was like, a year and a half into it, I was depressed. I was in London. I'd hardly left my flat again because the Gerson therapy, there's such a tight schedule. You have to juice fresh on the hour, every hour for 13 hours a day. And I was so depressed. I was just like, I need to get out of London. And I saw this 1 month belly dance training in Thailand. And I was like, book, I'm going belly dancing for a month. I just need to dance. Little did I know that that teacher is actually a very um, evolved feminine embodiment teacher. Her name is Monica Nataraj. Anybody needs to find her. She's absolutely unbelievable. And I went there, and for 1 month, we were on this teacher's training, and 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And we did not do one choreographed belly dance, not one. We were just deep in the emotion and deep in the feminine embodiment work, ceremonies, rituals. And one day we went into this ceremony and she got us to write these 1 sentence love notes on these balloons, put them in the middle of the room, and then everyone chose a different balloon. And I picked it up, and the balloon said, "You are one of us."
Mm.
Aha. And she said, "This is a love note for your yoni." Now, your yoni in Tantra and yoga and Sanskrit is your vagina, your womb, your female genital organs. Um, and in that ceremony, I looked at that note, "You are one of us." And I was like, wow, I've been fighting a battle with my own body, thinking that my body was betraying me, thinking that my body was against me. However, it is one of me. I made it. And for me to heal it, actually, I need to become friends with it. I need to love it. And I need to get to the deeper emotional root.
Mm.
So we then went into a 3 hour ceremony where we wrote love letters to our yoni, where we built temples for our yoni, and we went into these temples and we venerated them. And honestly, Mikaela, something shifted so deep in me energetically that night. I cried for 3 days and then my tumors disappeared.
Shut up. What? Incredible. Like, insane. It was just that one missing piece, and you figured it out. Everything was just so divinely guided. Your higher self was like, "I got you. Sit back and just trust me." And you were like, "Okay, take the wheel." Oh, it's so powerful and such a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, with I mean, you've had just your shit handed to you when it comes to your health. And now I feel like you're so healthy and you eat so healthy and you take such great care of yourself and your skin is amazing. But what would you say is like the hardest part about releasing that old identity, right? Going through that trauma and then stepping into this new version of you that is truly you at your purest form. Like this is you, who you authentically are meant to be. You've stepped into and owned this version of yourself. But how fucking rough was it to release that old identity?
Such a great question. Because I think it's like, when we go through these healings and journeys, not we grieve the part of us who we were beforehand. Obviously when I went through my tumors, before that I was known as Boozy Suzy and was a wild party girl, So obviously I had to grieve Boozy Suzy. And then, I had my brain injury and I had to grieve the person I was before my brain injury. And I feel like also one thing that we often don't talk about is the grieving of all the friendships we lose when we change.
Mm,
Because as you say, like you change and you become the purest version of yourself, and yet you're leaving all your friends behind. So then it's actually really lonely. Like I felt alone a lot on this journey because I love my friends and, I will never judge them for who they are, because I used to be a party wild girl too, but actually I don't want to be that anymore. And so then when I put myself back in those situations, it doesn't feel great.
Mm,
But then when I'm not in those situations, it feels really lonely. So
mm.
there's that middle ground, which is just really lonely along the way.
I feel you. I feel you on that. And that is definitely something that a lot of people, I think, also subconsciously are worried about is when I do step into this higher version of myself, like I, I'm going to be releasing a lot of things that I know are not serving me, and I know that my friends don't understand why I'm releasing these things, these habits, these things that we used to see as okay and acceptable that we just don't tolerate anymore, that we choose not to do anymore and be a part of anymore. And it could be drinking, it could be going out and partying and, even if you're not drinking, it could be um like gossiping, right? Like like instead of lifting ourselves up or talking about our aspirations and what we're working on, we're talking about other people or the trends or the gossip of celebrities. It could be letting go of all of that and stepping into this new version of you while leaving all of that in the past. And then also because you're not doing that anymore, you can even go back to those friends, and if they try and pull you into, back into that, like that's a choice where you either have to like embody this new version of yourself and hold the standard, like hold the new standard and be okay with the fact that they're never going to change, or they rise with you. And a lot of times they don't rise with you, and you have to make that decision of you got to stay in your lane and continue to do what you know is best for you, and like let those relationships go and grieve, but like also keep in mind, right, that those relationships that are leaving your life are on purpose for a purpose, and making room for these new friendships, these new relationships, these new connections that are on the same frequency as you to come in, right? So, yeah, it is grieving and it is sometimes so lonely, but also it's making space and making room for that. And like you have, I'm sure, made so many new connections, and so you've worked with such incredible leaders in the coaching industry, and it's same for me. Like I've worked with incredible leaders in the coaching industry. I have developed a community, right, of people who know what I do and do what I do, and it's incredible, like the change and the dynamic though when you're in the middle of it, of like, okay, you're kind of being pulled in both directions, and that can definitely be lonely, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Especially because I also know myself and I do, everyone's human as well. We all have to just understand all of our humanness and hold such compassion for it. I still have, like, within me, there is still the boozy Susie, for
Of
sure. So
mhm.
I know if I put myself in that environment, she could come out, I love champagne. But James Clear in Atomic Habits, he always talks about environment trumps willpower. So I actually just have to not put myself in those environments now. For example, on New Year's Eve just gone, I could have gone to my friend's house, but I decided to go to kirtan, which is spiritual chanting all night. So it's just, I
Wow.
need to choose what is truly best for me. And I went on my own because none of my friends will do that here in London, you know. But
Mhm.
also I know that that is how I wanted to start the new year.
Mhm. You're
fresh.
making decisions based off of, like, what would your higher self do?
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
not always the easiest, but it's always for your highest purpose.
Yeah, I love that. So, bringing it back in with, like, breath work and what you do,
Mm.
just to give an idea of to maybe somebody who's never done breath work before. When someone drops into breath work for the first time, what is actually happening in the body and subconscious that most people don't realize?
Mhm. So let me explain it to you with a story because I feel this will help paint a picture.
Yeah.
So when I was doing my breathwork training, we got taught it, you changing your oxygen levels, and when you change your oxygen and carbon dioxide levels, this helps you access this brainwave state, and da da da. You can intellectually understand it, but it wasn't until when I had my brain injury and I was doing a therapy called neurofeedback training, where they had straps and electrodes all around my head, and they were trying to get blood flow to my brain. Now, I had so much inflammation on my brain that one day nothing was getting blood flow. The doctors had me telling stories, counting numbers, repeating sentences after them, all the things that activates your prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortex is at the front of our brain. It's our monkey mind. It's often where we get caught in thought loops. Now, luckily, my doctor was super open minded. So that day when nothing was moving, he was like, Suzy, do your breathing. And within a second, I could see it on the screens all lit up, different parts of my brain lit up. Immediately there was blood flow. And that was when I was like, wow, I knew this was powerful, but it wasn't until I saw it like that in real time where I was like, wow, this is such an amazing opportunity for us to rewire our subconscious, our limbic system, release things
Mhm.
because it's like immediate access, it's immediate blood flow to the brain.
Yeah, wow. And I just think about there so you mentioned, like, there's different types of breath work that you can do, and I've done breath work, once before doing it with you, and it was very intense. It was more like pursed lips and, like, faster,
Mhm,
whereas your breathing is a lot like just loose mouth, loose jaw, like breathing, filling up your belly, filling up your chest, exhale, and like letting it flow. It's like just I don't know. It's so different. It's so much better, so much less intimidating as well. And that first breathwork session that I ever did is so intense for me, and I was screaming and crying and scream like when I say screaming, I mean like screaming bloody murder. Like I had just moved into my home and it was like a 250 square foot apartment. And I was like nervous that my neighbor was going to come knocking on my door and like asking if I was okay or if I was like getting murdered or something because it was just a lot.
mhm.
And then that experience like kind of made me not want to do breath work again, right? And so what I feel like a lot of there maybe are people out there like me that have experienced breath work before and don't know or understand that there are different types of breath work and not all breath work is created equal and that there are more intense ways of breathing versus not. Um, and there's a lot of people that might say, like, I'm afraid of what would come up or what might come up. Like, what do you believe that fear is about and what makes yours different compared to like the breath work that I did, let's say before
Mm.
learning about you, working with you?
So I think it's about the masculine and feminine way again, right? So we can
Mm,
like when we're working with our nervous system, you can go really hard and really fast and with that pursed lips, to effectively kind of push the trauma out, what you were doing, screaming, pushing it out. It's very, yeah, you know, and like and sometimes can also be traumatic. And I've had some really terrible stories of things happening to people in that kind of breath work. That is not the breath work I do. I believe that our nervous system, when held in such a safe, loving way, in an environment where it feels so safe, so nourished. When we hold our nervous system at that level of depth, we allow it to naturally open and release gently, rather than
Mm,
pushing, rather than forcing, just a gentle holding, an opening, and a release. And this is the kind of breath work I much prefer because I feel like your nervous system feels fully safe throughout the journey. You may not have the full bloody murder screaming the house down, which you can do in some of the other sessions, but we're all going to the same destination.
mm,
You can have just as deep an experience from this kind of breath work as you do with the other one.
yeah, yeah, very true. So what do you think that like people are really afraid of? You know, like what's that what's actually the fear? I think it's like the fear of change, you know? Or the fear of like kind of how the girl in Devoted was afraid of changing and evolving and what her family would how her family would judge her for that. I think that that's like what it is. Would you agree with me or would you say that there's anything else that maybe they're afraid of, like where that fear comes from and why?
Yeah, it is like, everyone's like, I'm good, I'm good. I've like got everything ticked on paper, I've got
Mm,
the house, got the boyfriend, da da da. I'm good. Why would I need to do that? There's like this kind of, why would I do it? And it's like, but are you really good? You realize how
mhm.
good life can actually truly be. Your version of good is such a different version of how good life can truly get.
Oof, that's a good one. That's a good one. And then, like, what would that look like? And, like, people are so addicted to, like, comfort and what they know that experiencing something like that would force them to see something more, and then they would have to go after that more, and that would be uncomfortable and a threat to their ego, right?
Yeah, and we all have our demons, we all have little demons inside of us, which if you haven't worked on, you know it. And it's like you just don't want to uncover them because they are going to be uncovered.
Mhm.
They feel totally different once they are uncovered.
Yeah. How do you feel about like ayahuasca or like the ceremonies, like those kind of medicine, like psychedelic ceremonies and like comparing it to breath work, like have what would you say? Like what's your take on that?
Yeah, I for sure. I know people are doing amazing work with them, so I think they definitely have their place if done safely and with
Mm,
a shaman who is clean and
the clean part knows what they're doing.
yeah. So obviously, because of my brain injury, I've never had the inner yes to whenever I get offered ayahuasca or so many different things, I've always just had the inner no. So I have always said no. However, there was one time where I was actually traveling around Egypt with my teacher, Monica Nataraj, who I love, and another shaman, 13 women, and we were doing ceremonies at all the sacred sites. And I didn't realize that Monica's business partner had bufo, which is the toad, and you smoke it, and it gets you to release your own DMT. So
Whoa.
the only times in our lives where we release that amount of DMT is when we're born and when we die. So she said to me, do you want to do this ceremony with me, Suzy? And I got the inner yes immediately. I was just like, yes. I was like, okay, here we go. I had a one-on-one ceremony with her whilst we were on a boat on the River Nile. She had crystal balls all over around my body, and she channels angels. So it was the most unbelievable experience. I mean, I did think I was going to die at one point. I was like, alive, am I dead? Am I alive? Am I dead? Oh my God. And then, of course, there was that moment where I was like, oh my God, I've been through a brain injury. Why am I doing this? But when I was in it and I got into a breathing pattern and I allowed myself to get into it, it was incredible. And what it showed me, because we always have to take away these aren't just experiences. We need to make sure we're taking away and integrating what we learn from them. So what I learned from it was at one point, everything became sacred geometry. So I was sacred
Ooh,
geometry. Bed was sacred geometry. Everything was sacred geometry. And what I noticed every time I had a thought, the geometry would change. And what it showed me is
whoa.
yeah. What it showed me was Dr. Joe Dispenza 101, the power of our thoughts, how
Mhm.
every single thought has a chain reaction. And I got to see it in real time whilst I was on the medicine. So I did get something from it. Would I do it again? I don't know.
Wow, what an incredible story. I mean, yeah, the power of our thoughts, but like even just you explaining it to me in that way of like when you had the thought that the geometry would change. Like
Absolutely.
that's an insane visualization and I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that because it's so true, you guys. If I always talk about on the podcast, like the power of our thoughts and our beliefs and our actions, but like it all starts off as a thought.
Yeah.
And Susie just like, she just took that and illustrated it into a visualization for you guys to understand the importance of your damn thoughts. So get it together. And
What
then,
I'll say is I've had breathwork experiences as intense and as deep as that. I've had
yeah,
breathwork experiences where I can only describe them as multidimensional orgasms, like
yeah.
out of
Because
body.
that was my question is like, I believe you can fully have out of body experiences with your breath. Like, you don't need anything external of you to experience that type of breakthrough or healing. Like you have everything you need within yourself, and breath work is just one of those that I truly believe is such an incredible and powerful modality.
Yeah. But I don't
So,
want people to get scared and think they're going to start jumping out their body in the
oh
first place like they do. You usually have to be open to having these deeper experiences. Like I truly believe our body will only give us what we can handle at any
yeah.
moment. So it's like, the first few breath works may just be tears, maybe releasing. I've had beautiful angelic experiences in my first ones where my dad would come and visit me. And then as
Wow.
you get along on your journey, then you can start using breathwork like we do in Top Tier to build your business, money mindset. And then you can start having out of body experiences. There's different layers as you go along your breathwork journey.
Totally. Yeah. And yeah, it's I say the same thing with what I do as far as like how I use my intuition to help people. Like your higher self is never going to give you information that you're not ready to hear. Like you have to heal certain things and then it unlocks the next thing that you have to work through. And the work is never ending.
I love that you said it unlocks the next things because that is so true. And I say that with my clients in breathwork. When you get an intuitive download in breathwork, if you don't take it, you're blocking the pipe.
Mm,
Take the action, you're blocking the pipe. So as long as if you're being guided with your intuition with these higher downloads, just make sure you're taking the action on them. Because if you don't take the action, you're not going to get the next one. But
exactly.
as soon as we start getting into a role of taking the action, then you're like, oh, and the next and next and next, and life is on a roll.
Yep. Yeah. I feel like that's where both of us are at right now.
Yeah.
Love that for us.
Yes.
Amazing, Susie. Okay. It was so incredible having you on the podcast. So, like, your story is just incredible and so inspiring. And I am so happy that you came on to share it with my audience and share your knowledge on breath work. And so go ahead and where can my audience find you? Where can they connect with you or book a session with breath work?
Yeah, I'm at Breathe with Suzy on Instagram, Suzy, Breathe with Suzy. And in my link in my bio, they can get some free downloads so they can start experiencing it themselves immediately.
Oh, I love that. And all of that will be in the show notes below, you guys. Thank you so much, Suzy, for coming on. And thank you guys for listening. As always, we will chat soon. Bye. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of Intuitive Flow with Mikaela Filar. If this lit something up inside of you, make sure you hit that follow button so you never miss another episode. We have new episodes coming out every week. If you love what you heard, drop a 5-star rating and review or share it with a family member or friend so that this podcast can grow and help more women rise. For more on self-love, self-image, intuition, and manifestation, come hang out with me on Instagram or TikTok at Mikaela Filar. The links are all in the show notes below. And as always, we will chat soon.